Hello and welcome to season 2, episode 3 of I'm Really Into That Stuff, the podcast where we talk about all of the woo-woo stuff that we are all into. My name is Janice Stern and I am super excited about today's conversation. This is a conversation that I've been looking forward to for weeks. So today, my guest is the beautiful, beautiful Bex. I am so excited to be here. You are the co-founder of Mystic Sisterhood and the resident tarot reader for them. You are embarking on your journey of finally setting up a business around your tarot practice. And I'm excited to dig into a whole bunch of different things with you today about all of that stuff that we're really into. So first and foremost, how are you?
Hi. Oh my gosh. Well, now I'm blushing. Oh my Lord. Oh my gosh. You can't just say things like that. Oh my gosh. But I'm
Hell,
doing
I can't.
exactly. But I'm doing really, really well. I'm glad we finally got to connect because I know I've been like traveling and stuff like that. But I'm doing well and I hope you're doing well. How are you?
Rocking and rolling. I've been saying rocking and rolling a lot lately. I'm not sure what's come over me, but then I laugh because I'm like obsessed with crystals and I don't know,
Actual rock and roll.
actual rocking and rolling. And I guess when you tumble crystals, you're rolling the rocks.
That's true, actually.
Right? Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So I wanted you to share a little bit about some of your journey into spirituality, kind of how you got to where you're at. And yeah, let's start with how you got to where you're at.
Yeah, of course. So I actually started my spiritual journey. I grew up in a very religious household, so I didn't have a ton. I had spirituality, obviously, because with religion you have that, but it wasn't in this form itself. And I actually ended up really diving into spirituality and what it is for me as an adult about 2017, I want to say. I was going through a really bad breakup. And
As we do.
I was going through a really bad breakup and I was just going through it.
Hmm.
And I had a friend who was like, you know what? Why don't I do a tarot reading for you? Because like maybe that'll just help you. Because I was in those headspaces where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I just need a piece of advice. Like I don't know what's going on. And I don't really know the best path forward.
Hmm.
And they're like, let's do a tarot reading. So we did a tarot reading. And through that, I thought it was really interesting. And they're like, well, why don't you get a deck so you can kind of feel some sort of control in your life? And I was like, that's a good idea. And then through that, I also got really interested in like candle magic and that kind of thing. But with tarot, I got my own deck. My first deck was called the Happy Deck because I was, coming from a deeply religious background, I was a little scared of tarot, and I was like, oh.
Sure. You're like,
So
what demons will come out of these cards?
I
Yeah.
know. I like,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I got the Happy Deck, which I still love, and I started doing tarot, and it came very, very naturally for me. It was something very easy for me to pick up, and I used it as a very therapeutic type of meditative practice for myself, and I would do it every day and just like the best way to move forward on the day and how I should approach that day. And it was just like a very healthy way to check in with myself and how I'm feeling. And through that, I just got more interested, started collecting crystals. I have friends that I connected with who were very into astrology and they read charts. So I learned a little bit there. I'm not like, I don't read charts or anything like that, but I'm interested in
Sure.
astrology and I understand it on a very basic sense.
Yeah.
And through that, you just start connecting with people who are interested in the same things as you, and you just make these little friendships. And I think it's great.
It happens that way, right?
It really does.
Yeah. You're talking about your first deck, and there's no love like your first deck. There's really
It's
isn't.
true.
Do you feel like,
Yeah.
do you still go to that first deck when would you say you go to that first deck?
Okay. So as you know, all decks have like their own personalities.
Totally.
Yeah, which is why I always tell people like when you get a new deck, cleanse it, obviously, but also do an interview, do a deck interview. And I have like a set questions that I'll always ask my new decks. So that first deck, one holds a special place in my heart because it was my first deck, but also it's a very sweet deck. So if I'm like emotionally fragile and I don't want to get ripped a new one necessarily, I'll go to that deck where I'm like, I need some gentleness.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
need
Somebody
to be
hold
told
my
nicely.
hand.
Yeah.
Play
I'm
with
like,
my hair. Yeah.
yeah, I need some softness.
Yes.
And I need to like get through this in like a very sweet way. I'll
Mhm.
go to that deck. because, or if I'm reading for somebody who is very nervous about
Yeah,
tarot
they're
and is like
fresh.
very fresh, very nervous, maybe
Mhm.
somebody else kind of talked them into getting a reading, like,
Mm.
and they're just like very like, ooh, like it scares me. And like when I see that card, it scares me. I'll often use the happy tarot deck actually, because the cards are not scary. They're like bright colors, there's like candy involved and that kind of thing. So it's just a less scary situation for them. And they're not trying to like read into the cards before I can tell them what's going on.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right, right. They're not like jumping to all these terrible conclusions about their own life decisions. You're like, no,
Yeah.
everything's fine.
You're
This
like, it's
candy tells
okay.
you that everything's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Look at
Yeah,
the candy. It's okay.
yeah, exactly. That's what we do with children, anyways. We're like, here's some candy, you'll be fine.
Exactly. Exactly.
Hilarious. So, how many decks have you gotten now?
Oh my gosh. I don't even know. I don't even know. I've got three, four, five, six. I have like at least seven tarot decks.
Okay.
And then I've got like a couple oracle decks.
Yeah, you sound like me. It's the kind of thing where like,
Yeah.
you start and you're like, I only need one. And then all of a sudden you're just
Yeah.
like, in a pile, like just
Yeah.
covered in yeah, yeah. And
But they're all for different things. And then sometimes people
yes.
give them to you and you're like, well, yeah, I'm gonna take this.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
And
you see
like,
one, you're like, it's so pretty.
right. And it's funny because sometimes, especially when I'm reading others, like, obviously I've been away from a number of my different decks. And like, there are definitely times where I can hear one of the decks that I want to be using, but it's not with me. And I'm like,
Oh,
okay, I'm going to have to deliver this message to you in a coded way. I'm super sorry.
oh. You're like, it's not gonna come through exactly the same way, but I'm hearing it. So here
Yeah.
you
And,
go.
and also like, the messages are in every oracle deck and every tarot deck. Like it's always the same. It's coming from the same source. So it's always going to be the same
Mhm.
message. But there's just, it's like, am I going to deliver this? Yeah, with candy, or am I going to deliver this with
Yeah.
fire and,
Yeah,
poison? Yeah. So
exactly. Yes.
I want to know, as you have kind of been on this journey of reading others, what the most rewarding part of it is for you, because I think it's such a, it has become something that people do very laissez-faire in the world, and I think it's something
Mhm.
that you have an understanding of the integrity that is necessary, and the power of it. And so I want to know kind of A, how it fuels you, and then B, also, you know how are you navigating being a reader at a time where there are so many people who are pretending to be that?
Mm, yeah. And like what seems to be a very oversaturated market,
Yes,
which is so
especially if you're on
interesting.
TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
Can't Gotta love those people. Please,
My
please read.
friends and I send each other memes all the time about those people. I think for me, when it comes to reading, the most enjoyable thing and what's so fulfilling about reading is just genuinely helping people.
Hmm.
Knowing that you were able to give some assistance in any way to help them move forward on a better path, to have more direction in their life, to just like feel less lost
Mhm.
or any sort of thing. It's like sitting down and having a chat with a friend and they're asking you for advice, but you're not giving the advice. You are giving them the messages they need. And I find I've told a
Mhm.
lot of people when it comes to readings, I'm like, I'm not telling you anything new. I'm just confirming what you need to be confirmed.
Right,
I'm either
right.
confirming something for you, I'm giving you a heads up about something, or I'm giving you advice on how to handle a situation. Those are
Mhm.
usually like the main things that are happening.
Right,
I'm never going to hit you with something like so blindsided that you're like, what? Like, that's never gonna happen. Like,
right.
yeah. Like,
I
I'm not
might
going to
give
tell
you
you
an
someone's gonna,
aha. I
oh,
might help
yeah.
you to like open your eyes and fully receive, like that
Yeah.
old adage of like you hear the same thing many times, but then one day you just like get it. I feel like,
Yeah.
readings help with the getting it.
Absolutely. Because almost I feel like people finally give themselves, if you're in a reading situation, people finally give themselves permission to
Mhm.
accept whatever you're having to tell them, where they will
Mhm.
fight it off, fight it off. Sorry, I also live near an airport, so you probably hear a plane. Well, they'll fight it off, fight it off, fight it off. And then finally, when they're in this setting, they'll finally accept it. And they'll be like,
Yeah.
okay, I've actually been feeling that way for a while, or I've been hearing that, or like deep down, they just knew there's some part of them that knew that what you're saying is right. And then they finally accept it.
Hmm.
And I think that's a very interesting moment that you have as a reader
Yeah.
when you get those where you're like, so now you're accepting it. Very interesting. Okay, let's dive deeper into that. Leave me alone.
Right. I'm just not nothing. I'm just sitting pretty.
It's not like we've ever had readings together.
No,
No,
never. No,
no, no, no.
we never.
No. But yeah, I think I genuinely the most fulfilling part for me is just being able to help people and that's why I always tell people when I give them readings, if they come back later and they give me feedback like, oh my gosh, what you told me, it wasn't really resonating during the reading and it just happened. And because I had that reading, I knew how to handle the situation. Or
Mm-hmm.
people will be like, oh my God, I feel so much better. Like I feel like I can handle things now. It just hearing that feedback is so nice as a reader, just to have someone be like, that really resonated with me. And thank you.
Yeah.
You're like, thank you for letting me know,
Right.
because sometimes you can feel like you're giving messages like out into the abyss if you're not getting anything back. So getting that confirmation back is so, so nice. And just knowing that you're able to help in any sort of way is like the best feeling in the world. And when we're talking about oversaturation and people pretending to be, I I feel some sort of way about it, but
Like, let's be real about it, because this is a podcast and this
oh
is
yeah, that's
like
true. That's
I want to
true.
get fucking real about it, because
Yeah.
to me, I think that there are so many flippant assholes who got a tarot deck yesterday and like,
Yeah.
took a 10-minute course and they're like, I'm ready to be a reader. And I'm like, literally nothing about you is ready.
And they just like
Stop
take
doing this.
advantage of people
That
too,
too. That
which
too.
is so terrible. You take care, like, if especially if you're taking advantage of people in like a vulnerable state where they're going through
Mm-hmm.
grief or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. Like, that's not okay. It's not okay.
I mean,
Um,
spirit will take care of that. I'm
yeah,
always like, you invite that karma in, whatever comes your way is all you,
karma's
baby.
real,
Karma,
and
karma is real.
it's very, very real. And it's something that you always have to and that's the thing. Like, there's just so much. And it's one of those where I wish people just knew how much goes into it. Because a lot of people do think they're like, oh, you just got a deck and you like read up on it a little bit
Right.
online and like that's it. And you're like, well, no, there's like a whole energy intuitive practice that goes into it. There's like
Mm.
mediumship that goes into it. There's psychic ability that goes into it sometimes, or most of the time mediumship is sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's this exchange of energy between people, and it's like a baseline agreement between people that we're going to share this energy and we're going to see what comes from it, which I also think is really interesting because I have for myself, I have a rule. I know not all readers do,
Mm.
but I have a rule for myself. Like, I will not read energy for someone who did not give me permission.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're in a relationship with somebody, I can read the energy of that relationship, but I'm not going to go into your partner without their permission and be
Mm.
like, well, he's going to do this. And like, that's
Right.
not on
Right.
me. But
And
I know some
similarly,
people
if you're my
will.
friend and I know something's going on in your world, but you're not
Yeah.
sharing it with me and you haven't given me consent,
Yeah.
I'm gonna just bite my tongue and listen, but not say anything.
Yeah, exactly. But I think there's a lot of people that won't do that. And so I think that people just don't really understand that there's these rules that you have and
Yeah.
that you learn, and it's not just about a deck and a card. It's about the energy involved, the people involved,
Mhm.
and what those cards and how those messages come to you, because it's very specific for each reader. Like, what a card means to you means something completely different to me, and it means
Totally.
something completely different per question, what you guys are discussing, the context of it, the other
Yep.
cards. Like, people just don't have any idea. They're like, well, this card means this. And like, that's what it is. And you're
Yeah,
like,
the book
no.
readers, they're like,
Yeah.
they pull out the book. And I mean, listen, a lot of times when I do readings, I pull out the book and I'm like, the book is going to give you something and then I'm going to unpack what it said.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Because
no,
there's a baseline. Obviously, there's a baseline of what every card means, but it goes deeper than that.
sure. Especially with
Yeah.
tarot, it's such a deep, deep, deep
Yeah.
magic.
Hmm.
Um, I always say that being psychic is like, it's a gift and but we all have it, right? It's like we all have muscles, but you have to really like
Hmm.
work those muscles to feel
Hmm.
strong to be able to read others. And and not be just like projecting your own shit onto other people.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's like all those people on TikTok. They're like, you're having a really big trouble in your relationship. And I'm like, did you just have a breakup? Because like
Right.
it's showing on your face.
Yeah, like you're going through something and
Yeah.
you're just trying to find an outlet.
Yes. But I feel like it's one of those things where the more time you spend flexing those muscles and learning to work them, then you really can't break that integrity. You can't break that like barrier of taking advantage of people, because the taking advantage of people is the antithesis of what spirit is intending through
Mm-hmm.
tarot. Even though tarot gets this terrible rap, it's kind of like how witches get a bad rap, or how anything
Yeah.
else spiritual gets a bad rap before, because like, thank you, Catholic Church, for bastardizing everything. But their magic is real, right?
Yeah. Because they're like,
So
oh, you're trying to tell the future. I'm like, No. First of all, no. Like, that's not what's going on.
you have
And that's
free
when
will.
yeah, you have free will. And that's also another thing is I have to be very careful. And I'm sure you know this as well. You have to be very
Mm,
careful with the way you word things when you are delivering a message. Because
yes.
you can't say, hey, if you do this, then this will happen.
Mhm.
It's here's a piece of advice. And if you follow that advice, this is a potential outcome. Because
Right.
once you give someone advice, they can run with it whatever way they want. They can avoid it, they can lean into it. So, and then
Blame
people will come
you,
back
make
to,
you
oh,
the
yeah, people
the,
come
the
back to me and be
villain.
like, you said this was going to happen and it didn't happen. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. First
Nope.
of all, no, I didn't.
Right. That's why I
Like, calm
record
down.
all my readings. I'm like,
Let me bring up the receipts.
exactly. Let's just review.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like, recording is an important thing, but I want to ask you, because you sort of like hinted at it, and
Mm.
I want to ask you, do you
Okay.
consider yourself a medium?
No. So I took a psychic and mediumship course.
Uh-huh.
I've taken a couple psychic courses, like psychic mediumship courses.
Yep.
So I've dabbled in connecting with mediumship and testing that out.
Mhm. What does that feel like? What does that look like for you? Can you explain that a little?
Yeah. So for people that might not even really understand, so like with psychic ability, that's your general like I know, I guess the best way to explain it is like your intuition and like hearing messages and knowing things. It comes from spirit, really. Spirit, guardian angels, your spirit guides, all of
Yep.
that. Mediumship is connecting with energy that has moved on, has passed.
Mhm.
So that's when you talk to like,
Died.
yeah, died. When people are dead.
When they
De-
in
when
the
they did.
ground.
When they did.
Yeah.
When you talk to people who are dead, that's mediumship. And there is a very distinct difference
Yeah.
between the two. And it's very
Sure.
different energy as well. And you connect in a very different way. So I find mediumship very interesting. I'm
Mm.
still a little hesitant about it because sometimes you just don't know what's going to come through. And
It
it
can
is
be
just such
invasive.
it can be very invasive, and I'm always very hesitant to like open that floodgate
Mm.
because where I feel that spirit, when it comes to like guides and angels and that sort of thing, are a little bit, what's the best word? They're just very conscious about like the way they connect and the messages they give. I feel when it comes to spirit that's moved on, they're a little bit more abrasive, a little bit more like, I want your attention. I want your attention now. I don't care what you're doing. I
Yeah.
want this message to come through. They'll fight each other for like first in line.
Bex, when I talk about my own mediumship and my gifts, I often talk about it like as if my eyes are like a plexiglass that spirit can see through. And as
Yeah.
soon as spirit sees what I'm seeing, they plug into me like as if I were a 1920s switchboard.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes, especially when there's a person in front of me who's lost many people,
Mhm.
the noise of all of those people trying to get their thing out. I'm like, I sound like an idiot. Can you guys give me one fucking second to clear my mind? But no, I'm not allowed. Like they're like,
No.
oh my God, they're there. I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
leave me alone. So I understand.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah.
I
No, and that's
digress.
the thing. No, no,
Yeah.
no, not at all. Like, but that's what it is. And that's what I've had from many teachers and friends who are mediums, they always discuss how it can be this overwhelming of people just in a crowd, like not even formulating a line, just wanting to get their word out because finally there's someone that can tell their message and they want to
Yes.
get it out, but also like not being very respectful about it. And it can be very overwhelming. So when it comes to mediumship, I'm a little hesitant to open up that door,
Yeah.
but it is something that I have dabbled in when it comes to classes. Otherwise, I stick more to the psychic, intuitive, talk to guides, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think spirit that has never incarnated, they're just like, because they never had quantum, like because they've always been quantum, they've never experienced time and space in the way that those who have crossed over have. There's a gentleness, there's like an infiniteness that exists, and that's like a lovely thing to tap into. And that's the same thing that has, in 3 months or 3 weeks or even sometimes 3 years, you go for a reading and then that confirmation comes because time and space is not linear, right? So you get a reading from somebody, or you give a reading, for example, and then somebody comes back to you, they're like, oh, that thing that you said might happen happened. That comes from a hired source. Whenever I do mediumship readings, whether they're sort of not intentional. I don't sell my services as a medium. That feels inauthentic to me, even though I could, but I don't like it.
Yeah. It's not a comfortable connection, I guess is the best way to say. Like, yeah, it's just not comfortable because you're just connecting with someone. I don't know. It's because I don't know if it's in my head. I'm like, I'm connecting with someone who's passed on, and because there are spirit guides who are people who did live on the earthly plane and have like lived through any lives and are finally like, I'm done with Earth. I'm good. And they've ascended into this guide role and they've been there for a while and they know their shit. And they're the ones that can be gentle because they know what they're doing. And especially, when you get like a really, really like old guide and they're just like that,
like a magi or a sage.
And they're just like so like calm and like centered and peaceful.
For days later, you're like, I don't know who that person was that I was reading, but thank God they exist because their guide is beautiful.
And they're often, you also find that a lot of like the old guides are the ones that work with people's hearts. And like that, where then when you get like the younger guys, they're a little bit more tied to the earthly plane. They're the ones that are like in the forefront, like guiding people's personalities and stuff. You're like, oh, that's kind of fun. So that's also just like a really interesting dynamic that people have that they don't know about.
Sure.
But I find that, they just like, it's just more respectful. And I don't know why, but with like mediumship, I'm like, it's just
because
so
humans are fucking disrespectful, man. Humans are fucking disrespectful.
It's true. And like they're going through it still because they're still learning their lessons even then. So
if you haven't ascended, then you're still stuck in a realm that is, I call it like the in-between. It's like a waiting room between here and the beyond, and we don't exactly know what that looks like, but I think that there definitely is a chaos that exists in that realm that can be overwhelming sometimes. Although it also, the thing I love about it, like in contrast to what we're saying, is that 10 times out of 10, when those messages come through, the people who receive them feel an unbelievable peace from the messages that come through.
That's super true.
So that's a gift for sure. But
that's incredibly true. I've seen people, I haven't done it like for people, but I've been in the room for people where they have connected with parents that they had terrible relationships with when they were living, and they've post-mortem been able to repair that relationship and have peace with that. And I think that's so beautiful. And that's the thing. It's like mediumship brings about this different situation where you can bring peace on a whole different level and healing on a whole different level. It's just, for the reader, it can be a little bit chaotic. You're like, I'm giving you this wonderful, peaceful message, but in my head, I've got like 5 people yelling at me.
That's why we need boundaries.
Exactly.
It's also why all those fake schmucks on TikTok are so out of integrity, because the truth is that if you don't have those boundaries, what ends up happening is exactly that. You begin to project either other people's messages, which happens often, Or you begin to project messages that are for you and you're like, oh, this is for this person. But to have boundaries with physical humans and also with spirit takes
Yeah.
a lot of work.
Oh yeah. And then you also have to like pick up on that energy because I've had before, I'll be in a reading and I'll be like shuffling, like you know how you shuffle, think about the
Yep.
question, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So I'll be shuffling and my mind will wander for
Mm.
me. And I'll be like, "Ah," my mind will wander and a card will come out and I'll immediately be like, that was for me. That was literally answering the one blip of a thought that I had. This is not for you. And they're like, what?
Mhm.
And I was like, don't worry about it. That was just for me.
Yep.
But to know the difference, because some people might
Yes.
run with that. And then suddenly
Yes.
they're giving a reading for somebody else that's actually for them.
Right.
And it's like, you got to know the difference. You got to know. And that's a lot. I feel like that's where you really practice. That's where you practice. You learn the energy. You learn yourself as a reader. You learn how spirit communicates with you. And very
What is your
interesting.
medicine? What is your magic? How do you
Yeah.
serve that medicine? How do you do that? All that stuff. It's really important.
Yeah.
I wanted to chat with you also about candle magic because
Ooh, okay.
yeah, because I feel
Ooh.
like there is, again, it's another one of those things where it gets such a bad rap, but
Mhm.
the element of fire is, we know, the element of alchemy, of transformation, of change. And in a world where they really want everything to stay exactly the same,
Mhm.
there, I think that candle magic is among the most powerful things that we can do to shift our energies and to, make real change in the world.
Yeah.
And so, I'd love it if you could just sort of talk a little bit, maybe explain about what candle magic is and then how you kind of go about that practice. I know it's different for everybody, so I'd love to
Yeah,
hear kind of what your
absolutely.
version is. Yeah.
So the most basic way that I can describe candle magic is intention.
Hmm.
And that's why even when people who are deeply religious are afraid of candle magic, I'm like, what do you think you're doing when you light candles in the church? Those are intention candles.
Right.
You're
Or
doing the
or on
same.
Shabbat or
Yeah,
for Hanukkah or for
exactly. It's
20,000 other reasons.
literally, it's intentions. You're
Yeah.
putting your attention into this and you're burning it to give it that extra
Mm-hmm.
fire, that extra fuel to
Mm-hmm.
reach spirit and for spirit to communicate with it and interact with it and
Right.
to either accept or sometimes deny it, which does happen sometimes.
Sure.
But it's like the best way to make a direct request,
Hmm.
really,
Hmm.
and to set energy out there to really try to affirm your beliefs and
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. Words are failing me at this point. But
All good.
for a lot of people, people do associate candle magic with like setting curses
Hmm.
and a lot of dark magic, and that's something that I never subscribe to. I know people who have done that,
Hmm.
who have used specifically candle magic to curse people, to do blood magic mixed with candle magic.
Yeah.
And it's something that I ended those like connections very quickly. And then I also
Well,
had to actively work against them
let's
because
let's talk
yeah,
about blood magic and candle magic for a minute,
yeah.
because I think that there is light and there is dark in that.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
I think that as a woman who bleeds,
yeah,
using your blood in magic can be
yes,
very potent and powerful and
very.
empowering. And I think that
Hmm.
it's part of the divine feminine consciousness that is rising, that we're beginning
Yeah.
to understand how much potency there is in that blood. Now,
Hmm.
drawing your own blood is a very different kind of blood, a very
Hmm.
different kind of magic. And so I'm curious what the hell your friends or your
They were not drawing blood, they were using their like
menstruation.
natural, yeah, their menstruation blood,
Yeah.
but they were using it in a negative way to
Mm,
negatively impact other individuals. And
yuck.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was something, and they were like, oh my God, it's so amazing because like it's working because of XYZ. And I was like, that's not gonna happen, not on my watch. And then I had to actively one protect myself from that
Mm-hmm,
energy, and
mm-hmm.
then also try to negate that energy for other individuals as best I could and try to protect them as well because that's not energy that I invite into my space. It's not energy I invite into my home, my life. And it's not energy that I would ever wish upon another individual, especially when I knew that the individuals they were doing that to were friends of mine.
Right.
So I was said,
Right.
nope. So I had to actively work against it and really protect myself, my home,
Oh
my
yeah, my
friends.
guides are I got chills everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh,
It was like very
it's
unchill. It was very, very unchill.
deep work. Deep work.
Yeah, it was a it I had like just gotten back from a vacation and I was like, this is what I gotta do. Okay. I was like, all right.
Day in the life over here,
I
folks.
know. I was like, but but that's what you have to do. But the thing is though, like there is, like you said, there's light and dark to everything. So it's
Sure.
really how you have power within you. You have magic within you, and it's how
Yes.
you choose to use it, how you choose to embrace it and to put it out there. And for me, a lot of my intention candles are to just bring good energy for myself, bring good energy for other people. When I was going for a job, I was burning green candles like crazy, but it worked. Like it helped.
Get it, girl.
Brought citrine to every interview I did with them. But it's really just setting intention
Mm.
and really just trying to bring about the energy that you want and really set it out there and make a request to spirit and to just ask for help in that regard and hope that they hear your plea and that they throw you a bone, which they often do.
You know what? When you ask, spirit's like, oh, is that all you needed? No problem. I can do that.
Yeah.
But it requires sometimes speaking out loud, and
Yeah.
sometimes it requires a little bit of extra.
Yeah, sometimes you need to anoint the candle with specific oils. Sometimes it's about like infusing it with intention. So you have to like kind of do some
Reiki.
prayer work
Yeah.
ish, like energy prayer work over the candle beforehand. You always want to cleanse the candle before and the space before, just make sure that like you're not fighting against any stagnant energy going into it.
Yep.
Sometimes you carve intentions into there. If you're doing protection candles for people, like carving their name into the candle helps a lot with the directness of that protection.
Right. Sigils.
Sigils, the color of the candle can help, but if you have a white candle, white can stand for any color, which is great. But the color can help with the potency and the direction. It's just anything to really help spirit understand specifically what you're trying to do, because often spirit will like to interpret it the way that they want to interpret it. And sometimes they do know better. You'll be asking for one thing and they're like, actually, we're going to give you this. And you're like, but that's not what I was asking for. And they're like, yeah, but it's what you need.
Yeah, it is what you're asking for. You've been asking. You've been asking. You just don't think you have. Yeah.
But anything to help the potency, to help the message be louder and clearer, really helps.
Yeah, that's why, in the olden days when witches had covens, the potency was stronger with more witches in the coven, because more intention goes into the spell, more intention goes into the magic, more magic goes into the container, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the more people that put their energy towards this one goal, the stronger it is, the louder the message is, and the more magic behind it.
So you've come from this religious background, and now you fully embraced mostly embraced, I guess. I think there's probably always a part of us who's like, am I working with the devil? No.
Yeah.
Right. But you've arrived at this place, and now I'm curious where you want to see it go in the future, because I think there's so much of it. It's clearly, I think spirituality is beyond trending now. I think it's become the norm. Crystals are everywhere. Tarot is everywhere. So I'm curious, where you want to see these practices, candle magic, tarot, even astrology and all of that kind of stuff, psychic mediumship. Where do you want it to be in, let's say, 10 years from now?
Yeah, I think in 10 years, I would love for it to not be, it is like more mainstream and you see it a lot more often, but I do feel that it is like memed a little bit. People still like make fun of it. Or if you mention it, they're like, oh, you're one of those types of people. And you're like,
you're into that stuff.
Yeah, and you're like, that's not it. Or people think that if you are into spirituality, if you're into tarot, if you're into anything, that's like your whole personality. That
It's
you're
my
like,
whole
oh,
personality. Thank you.
you're like, that's all I care about. And I don't have any other interests, and
Right.
that I won't talk to you about any other thing. And it's like, that's not true. Like
Yeah.
people just shy away. And then because they shy away, they stay uninformed. And
Mm.
I just want people to not be as afraid of it or fight against it as much, because I think in 10 years, it'd be so wonderful if things like tarot or having like chart readings were, sorry, were part of like general wellness, self-care. Like
Hmm.
you can go to therapy. Like therapy is great. I highly recommend therapy can be wonderful. But also like you could do like, oh, I go to therapy and I do like a quarterly check-in with my tarot reader. Like,
Right.
but like for that to be a normal thing,
Yes.
because it is part of wellness, it's part of self-care. And it can help you mentally, spiritually, it can help with your creativity. It can
Hmm.
help in so many aspects of your life, like financially, just with your work, how you present yourself.
Yeah.
It can be so, so helpful to like do that, or to have like a natal chart reading, and to
Yeah.
just dive into the root of why you do the things you do, and
Look
like
at the map. Who are
yeah,
you?
yeah, be like, why, like how am I wired? Like
Hmm.
that's so helpful. And I would love for people to really embrace that, so when it comes to people doing self-work, I feel like we're in this age of people are really accepting self-work
Yes.
and self-care and really diving into that. And I would love for in the future for that to be part of that, and for it to be this natural thing of like, well, let me make myself work as easy as possible by really getting the blueprints of it and seeing what I'm working with, and then being able to work with other individuals in various capacities to just well-roundedly take care of myself in the best way I can.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. I think that's how I began my journey into spirituality. It was like I was seeing a therapist, seeing
Yeah.
multiple therapists,
Mhm.
and started getting, readings and healings and stuff like that. And I had a place to talk it out. But therapists don't give you advice. They just listen. They open
Yeah.
doors for you to give yourself answers. But a
Yeah.
tarot reader will be like, motherfucker, you've been doing this.
Exactly.
And sometimes you
Exactly.
need that, and then it helps you to be like, oh, that's why I've been spinning my wheels in the mud about this thing with my therapist that I've been talking about for 10 months and I haven't
Yeah.
moved on. And like, I know every angle of this and I can talk about it till I'm blue in the face every hour, week to week to week, but nothing has shifted. And then one reading and boom, you're like, oh, well, my reader said that maybe the energy behind this, maybe the you know, like subtle things that are happening beyond the veil, below the surface, beyond what we can understand might be this, and that does resonate. And so now I got to change how I'm looking at things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Mm-hmm.
that I love that. I also pray for that future where
Yeah.
all of these things become the norm. I mean, once upon a time they were, and then they weren't anymore.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I do think that there's like we were saying, there's social media, I think helps. I think it helps in both ways. I think it helps
Mm-hmm.
with making it a little bit more mainstream, but I also think that people also just like take the piss with it a lot when it comes to social media. But also I think apps are really helping, things like CoStar. I know the
Mm-hmm.
Pattern helped a lot.
What a great app.
Yeah, it helped a lot when it came to people who were very anti like astrology, because it
Yeah.
delivers it in a very natural conversationalist way that doesn't mention anything. They're not like, you're doing this because you're a Taurus or because of the, like, it just tells you how you are and
Right.
what your patterns are. That's
Right.
why it's called a pattern.
Yeah.
But I've had people who are like very against astrology, spirituality, who got it just because they were curious. And I was like, go get it. Just try it out.
Yeah.
And they came back to me and they were like, that someone was like, that app told me what took me 10 years of therapy to figure out. And it told me right away. And it's like, it
Yeah.
took me so long to realize that and to come to those conclusions. And
Mm.
that app told me in 2 seconds everything, just from like having my like astrological information. I'm like, yeah,
That's the magic of astrology. That's why I'm like bullish till
Mm.
death do me part on astrology. And I'm grateful that I'm a student of astrology forever, because I think that it is the map to understanding ourselves that is
Yeah.
flawless. And then I think, the more you understand about transits and houses and aspects and degrees in the
Mm-hmm.
chart, the more you can just really fuck your mind up and be like, oh my God, it said I was going to have a child on this day and I had a child on this day. It said I was going to get divorced on this day and I signed the papers on this day. Like, what the fuck?
Mm.
Those kinds of mind-blowing things most people aren't ready for, because they've been like, trying to just behave and be good and fit into the
Yeah.
like social norms and the boxes. And as it changes, I agree with you. I think we need to really have that be the focus forward. Yeah.
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 Just like wellness in all its forms.
Because we are all not well
We are very unhinged.
as a society, as a global situation. We're all not good.
Yeah.
We're like, I was saying the other day how like history is tracked by wars and by trauma and by the
Mm.
worst of humanity.
Mhm.
And we go by like, oh, has something terrible happened? It's a historical moment. And I'm like, what about the wonderful things that happen? Like, why
Yeah.
aren't we like on those days where you have those big aha moments and you look at something different than you did for 10 years? You have a story about yourself, and then all of a sudden you're like, it was a lie. Like, why don't we track history that way?
That'd be so
I
nice
know.
to have like
Like,
great historical moments. Like this was historical because like so much joy came from it.
right. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, on the news, they're not sharing any of the beauty, but like I want for all of the people in the media, all of the people who are celebrities, and I'm using my air quotes for those who are listening in the audience, celebrities, just the people that are out there with influence. I want them to be gifted as many readings as are necessary
Yeah.
until this becomes normalized, because I want, like, I'll never forget it. So my twin nieces are 11,
Mhm.
be 12 in April, which is an insane number.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah. And when they were gifted their first tarot deck, they could read everyone and everything more accurately than most grown people who have been practicing, particularly my one niece who is like really in it. And their generation will make it so that whether our generation gets on board or not, by the time Gen Alpha is norm, right?
Yeah.
So we'll get there, but I would really like for it to be a not too bumpy ride for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that they're getting into it early too, because they're still open. They're
They're
still
still
open, which
connected
is they're
to
still
Taurus.
connected. They haven't shut that down yet or been
Yeah.
told to or learned to. So I think that's really amazing because they're already starting out at such a higher level that when they
Yes.
then grow, it's just gonna go like it's gonna be infinite. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
great.
I can't wait to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
But it'll be a whole different world pretty soon, don't you think?
Mhm. Oh yeah, for sure. There's a big shift happening.
What do you think is going to be the next big shift we're going to see?
I honestly sometimes I feel like, oh, I saw that coming. And sometimes I'm like, I'm gonna just shut off all social media and just like crawl into a hole for 2 seconds.
I
Like,
saw somebody the other day that was like, please induce me into a coma for 48 hours so I can have a good
yeah.
night's sleep,
Like
please.
I'll wake up and I try to do this thing every morning because I was getting into like a pretty bad habit about social media and just work
Mm,
in general. So I try to do this thing every morning where like I'll wake up and I won't even check my phone.
good
I'll
for
wake
you.
up, I'll like take my dog for a walk, I'll like do my morning routine, everything. And
Yeah.
then like when I sit down and I'm like ready for work, I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna check my phone.
Hmm.
And I'll just see some of the shit on social media and I'm like, what is going on? What is that? Like, have we lost
Is
our
anyone
mind?
okay? Is anyone okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's crazy. I like for me to see something and to be like, since I've been sleeping and not even a full night's rest, like your girl is struggling. Since I've been sleeping, like three major things have gone down. And I'm like, what? What is happening? Like, how can anybody keep up? Nobody can.
And
Nobody can. We're constantly bombarded by like
yeah,
chaos.
yeah, like, China has a new coin with Russia and there's a war and America's doing this and this is happening with the medical industry and also
Yeah.
like, your cousin's uncle has, cancer and then there's also these things and there's
Yeah.
and you're like, "Oh my God. No wonder we have to rely on spirit." No, like
Oh yeah.
nobody in the physical is okay.
Yeah. Nobody's okay. And then I think that's why like entertainment news is so
Oh,
dumb, but I
girl.
love it because like it's so dumb, but I love it because it's finally news where I can just look at it and laugh.
Interesting.
like because
Interesting.
there's so much news you read that's heavy and you're like, oh my
Mm,
God, like what,
mm.
like there's so much sadness in the world. And then I'll see something like, and they were gonna get a divorce because she took a salad to this man, and you're like, the salad. Like it's that kind of thing. And you're just like, this is so ridiculous that this made news that like I can just laugh at this and at least like at least I'm not writing about a damn salad. Like that's
Right.
it
You're
gives me
like,
hope.
my
It
life is
gives
better
me
than that. That's funny.
it kills my hope because the people are writing about it. But also
Right.
I'm like, well,
Right.
at least I'm not doing that.
Right. There's like a mass distraction media
Yeah.
machine, like pumping out
Yeah.
these like demigods that we're supposed to,
Yeah. They're just
worship.
human. They're just like they're literally just like us.
Yeah.
Celebrities. They're just like us.
Right. Exactly. But not
Oh,
at
like
all because you
literally.
can't touch them. Yeah. That's why, I'm looking forward. And that's what I love about Web3. I mean, we haven't talked at all about Web3, but
No.
which is kind of nice. But it's what I love about Web3 is that we're building something where folks they don't give a shit. They're like, I don't care
Mm-mm.
that you have 700 followers on Twitter. Are you in this Twitter space? Then I guess we're talking. Let's
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah. It's like you can have as many followers as you want, but like, what are you saying?
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter how many followers you have or how
Mm,
many things you own. It's, but like, what are you doing as an individual? Like, what are
yeah.
you saying? How are you interacting with people? Like,
What
it's very
impact
much
are you
based on the
making?
individual and like not a numbers game anymore, especially in this current market. It's not a numbers game anymore because
Oh.
there's not a lot of numbers to work with.
No, there really aren't. So I do want to give a little bit of space before we close up. I want you to
Yeah.
just talk a little bit about Mystic Sisterhood because before
Yeah.
we do, I want to say, I had Lisa on the show last, and our episode hasn't aired yet. This whole season will be released in December. I had her on last week, and we chatted a little bit about Mystic Sisterhood, and I
Mhm.
sort of told the story about how it was my first NFT, and I came on into the project. I met you guys the day you started minting, the day of mint,
Oh,
and in that space that you guys were doing with Chelsea. And it was so kismet because I had closed a sisterhood circle that I'd been involved in for many years virtually doing planetary work. So we were doing sort of guided meditations together and working to literally drop into places around the world energetically and heal and put energy towards those places,
mm.
to bring healing to this planet before everybody lost the script in 2020. And when we officially closed that container, it was literally hours before, if not less, before you guys were having that space with Chelsea.
Oh my gosh.
I know, right? And
What?
I was like, I'm sorry, the Mystic Sisterhood, that's where I am right now. I'm exactly where I'm meant to be.
Oh my
Amazing.
God.
I know. So,
Oh, I
yeah.
didn't know that.
Well, now you know.
Oh my God.
So, you guys obviously, I mean, you're making a huge impact on so many people from the the container that you're holding, the
Mm,
Discord is such a sweet, soft place to come and land. I mean, you guys always call
thank
it like
you.
a cozy fort, and it is that.
Yeah.
And you're making such a big impact on so many people. And I really want to give a little bit of space for you to talk about, kind of why for you Mystic Sisterhood was so important to be this mystical, magical NFT project, as you build forward in this Web3, because you were in crypto before, right?
Yeah, I was very lightly in Web3 beforehand. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd been working on other projects, kind of like in the background, just like working on production teams
Mm-hmm.
on projects.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like the first one where it's like, okay, like you're gonna take the forefront and you're gonna be a co-founder. It's like, whoa, yeah, like this is our project, like we're doing it.
Right.
So it was the first time of doing that. But for us, it was so important that really it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, like in 10 years what do we want, and
Mm-hmm.
how we're wanting people to be able to do self-care in all of its forms in a very well-rounded way to really like fuel and nourish their soul.
Yeah.
That's what we wanted.
Yeah.
And so that's why you'll find with Mystic Sisterhood that it's not just mysticism, it's not just creativity, it's not just wellness, like spirituality, it's all of those things
Mm-hmm.
and whatever you feel yourself drawn to, because it really is about you and your soul and what it needs in that moment. And
Mm-hmm.
to have the opportunity to take in and consume any content that you need to help nourish that in that time. But it's also about just like, we wanted to create a place is somewhere where people can go and just like feel, like you said, feel comfortable and feel like a sense of peace and calm in the craziness that can be Web3 and Discord in general. And to just feel like, okay, these are my people and I am comfortable here to explore whatever interests me, even if this is just like beginning days, even if I've just heard about tarot and I'm interested in it, this is a safe place where I can explore that and I can ask questions and I can learn from other people and I can see how it's done. And that was really important because what happened is like we were talking about at the very beginning, is having mysticism in your life and finding others that are into that. It can be a little bit difficult sometimes because a lot of people will keep it under wraps.
Yeah.
And when Lisa and I first started talking about mysticism with each other, we had that connection where we're like, oh my God, like you're into this? Are you into this too? Like, oh no, you're into that. Like,
Are you
and
into
so
that stuff?
yeah, exactly. And it was just this really fun connection. And we wanted that for other
Mm.
people to have that moment of like, oh my God, these people are into the same thing I'm into. And so that was like a really, really big point in our community that we wanted, is for people to just come in, and whether it's creativity, spirituality, wellness, or all three, or anything in between, for people to come in and to be like, oh my God, these are my people, and to have that like direct access line to those people without having to really go out and search super hard for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in a world where there are so many people who feel like they can't talk to anybody in their world, particularly people who have come out of religious families or people
Mhm.
who, live in remote places or in different countries around the world that are more, Catholic or more sort of old world, if you will.
Mhm.
These kinds of things are so inaccessible to people to learn about. And, you guys do all kinds of different workshops and teachings and events and stuff around these things, and it's just so beautiful.
Mhm.
I'm blessed that you guys have included me in some of those things. And I think it's wonderful, especially that you've added the creativity piece in, because I think that those things are the same. I think magic is
Mhm.
creativity, is spirituality, and they are all
Mhm.
constantly interwoven with one another. So
Yeah.
I love that you guys are doing that. Any other thoughts or things that you want to share before we wrap it on up here?
Wrap it all up. Well, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you so much. One, for having me on here. It's been such a pleasure. But also just thank you for being such a present and wonderful human being in life and the Web3 space. I know you're like glaring at me because you're like, don't make me cry. But like, but like thank you, because I know, like you said, you were there from day one when we were minting. Like, so you've been there from the very beginning, and you've been such an integral part of our community. And you've kept Lisa and I sane so many times. You've been like, get off the ledge. And thank you so much. And I just know that you've impacted so many lives in Web3 and beyond Web3, obviously. But like,
Thank
you've
you.
impacted so many lives, and you're just such a bright energy. And we're forever thankful to have met you as a friend, not even just as like a mystical connection. So thank you so much. I love you.
I love you too.
Yeah.
This has been so fun. It's been so wonderful to have you, just to get to share time and space. I'm always grateful for
Yeah.
moments that I'm like, I have you all to myself. I don't even have to share you with anybody. Yeah, exactly. So I'm grateful that you were able to sort of carve this time out for me and for this. And
Yeah.
I'm just, yeah, I look forward to more conversations. I think it's important for everybody to get these kinds of messages and have these kinds of conversations
Mhm.
about what's really going on in the world and in spirituality, because it's, the trend ain't gonna die,
Absolutely.
but we
It's so
will.
true. We will. We will die. And then we'll be banging on someone's door when they're
That's
trying to do
right.
mediumship.
That's right. That's right. So start practicing so I can start communicating when I die.
Okay. Unless I go first, and then I'm gonna be like,
Leave me alone.
turn on that movie I like.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, well, I love you. Thank you. This has been, I'm really into that stuff. This is just a beautiful gift, and I'm so grateful. And we will be back again next week.
All right, thank you so much.